for the cat. I saw her in the grocery store. I can't really say how I recognized her after all those years. Maybe we don't change as much as we think we do as we get older. Maybe it was the bag of cat food she had in her shopping cart. Maybe it was the way she tilted her head to one side so that her dark brown hair fell across her face as she considered a purchase. She'd done that even as a little girl. Maybe it was the dimples in her cheeks as she pursed her lips to consider. I don't know. All I know is that at the moment I saw her, I knew exactly who she was. It's probably stupid for me to go back to my hometown. Even though it has been over 20 years, I probably shouldn't have gone. But something in me wanted to go back to the scenes of my childhood. I wanted to see my childhood home and check out my old elementary school. I wanted to stand there on the playground where I'd been treated as an outsider and gloat about the life I now led. Even more than that, I wanted to I wanted something pulled me back to the place where I first knew the thrill of ultimate control, and I wanted to make the people there pay for not ever making me feel welcome. I was probably staring just a bit too hard because her head jerked up and she looked straight at me. She made no outward sign of any kind to show she knew me too. Her large brown eyes had always been disconcerting, but now they gave it all away. She met my eyes, and it was all there, all those years ago, all the anger, all the hatred. She held my gaze for a moment, and then just walked away, ignoring me again. I swore softly in my mind at my foolishness in going back, yet standing there looking at her. I quickly left the store and sat in my BMW, sweating a bit, at the closed encounter. I gave myself a pep talk. So what if she recognized you? She can't possibly know that the Brian Greene she knew as a child is the same person I am today. My lips curved up in a smile. I surveyed myself in the mirror. My smile looked properly evil. Wouldn't she shit if she knew that little boy next door had grown up to be one of the most sought-after serial killers in recent history? I'd become so good at getting away with killing, and so famous in a way, that a particularly brutal murder where a corpse was found in pieces had come to be known as getting greened. My forte was kidnapping followed by slow dismemberment. Only people in the know realized that the term was derived from my name, and not many people who were in the know were left out there. Of course, I started the name myself on internet chat boards. I grinned, showing all my teeth, and enjoyed the wolfish nature of my smile. But then the smile faded. What if she did figure out who I am? She, more than anyone, knew who I am. I remember that summer day so many years ago. We were out in her parents' back garden. She'd always been very sweet to me, sharing drinks and snacks and spending time with me even though she was 8 years old to my 6. A few times before that day I remember her gently chastising me when she found me pulling legs off ants or poking holes in caterpillars. She patiently explained to me that I was causing them pain. I never answered her back. At that age I didn't have enough vocabulary to explain that I knew I was causing pain, and I enjoyed it. I could make the tiny creatures go from squirming and frantically moving to completely still. My mother had already explained, dead. It means they're gone forever, she said. But, Mommy, they're still here. I pointed at the flat ant she'd stepped on. Their bodies will waste away, and they can never move or make noise or do anything again. They can't come back, she told me. I thought of the kids who'd made fun of me on the playground. I thought of my dad, staggering and angry, crushing beer cans on my head and laughing. I liked the idea that someone could make it so they could never move and never come back. I discovered I liked making things dead. I couldn't explain any of that to Deidre. She was so gentle. She'd lift caterpillars into the trees and frighten squirrels out of the road. One day she'd cried for an hour because she found a dead squirrel in front of her house. No, I couldn't explain the way I felt to her. The taste continued to grow in me. I started finding larger things to make dead. I caught bugs and put them in spiders' webs so I could watch the spider eat them. I begged and begged for a snake so I could feed it myself. I found an old humane mouse trap in my parents' basement and caught mice to feed to the snake. I hammered some of my mom's clothespins into a piece of board in the garage and clipped the mice onto them. Then I burned the mice's ears to see what they would do. It wasn't very fun because they froze up after a minute or two and died very quickly. I wanted something more fun. That day, I found something. Deidre's cat had recently had kittens. They were just starting to be able to crawl around on their own. Their eyes were still closed. She brought them outside to show me. I was fascinated. They were so tiny and so weak. They were all colors and had downy fur. Deidre held a calico one up for me to touch. It was so soft. "This is Sam. He's my favorite." She smiled encouragingly at me and placed it in my hands. It made small mewling noises as it searched blindly for its mother in the palm of my hand. Its helplessness lit a fire in me. I picked it up by the stub of its tail. "No, don't," Deidre started, but it was too late. I dashed the kitten's head as hard as I could against the sidewalk. Deidre made a noise that was part protest and part scream. Then she tenderly picked up the kitten, which was bleeding from one side of its mouth. It wasn't moving. The blood dripped down over her hands. She swallowed convulsively. Her eyes narrowed as her eyes left the cat and focused on me. She swallowed again, very hard. I watched her throat move, fascinated. Then I looked back up to her eyes. There was pure hatred there. "Get out," she said through clenched teeth. "Don't ever come back here again." She walked slowly into the house, and I lost the only friend I'd ever had. She never forgave me. I told myself I didn't miss her, but I did. I cried that night and many nights after that. I had learned that to satisfy my hunger for death, I would not be able to have people be close to me. I learned that lesson well. Deidre walked out of the store and jolted me out of my reverie. I decided that she would be the first person on my list. I started the car and followed her out of the parking lot. I carefully stayed just far enough back so that she wouldn't notice me. She drove slowly, fully stopping at each sign and looking both ways. She was a cinch to follow. We didn't have far to go, and I'm going to have to skip a part because I can't make a video small enough to post to YouTube if I don't. So I'm going to skip to the end. I noticed only one car in her driveway. Good. She lives alone. I staked out her house from my convenient stand of trees. I had packed sandwiches and a drink. My plan was to stay there all day watching her movements, finding out her habits. When I was sure where she was most vulnerable, I would strike. In the morning, she came out of the house dressed in a suit and got into her car and drove away. After she had been gone for a couple of hours, I was sure she must have gone to work. I considered the possibility of following her the next day when she left to scope out the possibility of taking her out at work, but decided to stick to my original plan. I took myself off to the hotel to nap so I could be fresh for that evening. Skip again. On the third night I was set. I was sure to get there before she left for her walk. This time I did not climb a tree but waited behind one close to the path. As she walked by, I would step out behind her, then place the wire around her neck, pulling her behind the tree. Every nerve was taut, straining to hear her coming along the path. A rustling noise startled me, and I jumped. But it was just a black cat walking through the ferns under the trees. The cat stopped and looked at me in the twilight. Its yellow eyes had an eerie quality. I breathed a sigh. Then there was a knife at my throat. "This is for the cat," said Deidre. And then she slit my throat.